The reason we first Googled swing sex clubs was because we were so burnt out from life. We had 3 kids. This was before pandemic. I was homeschooling on purpose just because I thought it would be harder. Homesteading, home birthing, running my business. And my husband, super stressed. He was a stock trader. If you ever want an ulcer, stomach ulcer, try stock trading or working with skating parents. And we just thought, when have we ever had fun together? What could we do to prioritize just enjoyment for us? Because everything was about being super practical financially, professionally, all these things.
This is episode number 548 with Ashleigh Renard, How to Keep Monogamy Hot. This is such a fun topic, and I can't wait to talk to Ashleigh about her book and her just what happened in her marriage to make her monogamy hotter. And I think that this is a conversation that will appeal to you, whether you're married, whether you're in a relationship, and whether you're seeking a relationship. It's going to be really, really fun and sexy. So stay tuned for Ashleigh. She'll be with us in just a minute. But I want to welcome you back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you on your journey to lasting love, I wrote 2 books. The first one is called Becoming a Woman of Value, How to Thrive in Life and Love. And this book is for women who want to really improve their success in all areas of life and love, and to really increase their confidence from within and their ability to speak up and take a stand for what's important in their lives. The second book was just released on Valentine's Day, and it's called Choice Points in Dating. And it's about empowering people to make healthier choices at every stage of dating and relationships, because we often make horrible choices and we don't learn from them. So this is really a step-by-step roadmap to help you succeed in your love life. And you can find both books on Amazon for Kindle or paperback. Every week I share a tip from the Woman of Value book. And this is step number 19, which is choose love over fear. We often are motivated by fear in our love lives, and we make decisions based on the past, based on being hurt, and we can sabotage our love life because of our fear. And so I encourage you to take a look at the choices you're making and whether you're ruling somebody out because of who they really are or because of your past pain. So really take a moment and really process that, because once we really process the pain that we had in the past and realize that each person is a clean slate and you rule them in until they rule themselves out, you can choose love over fear. Before I bring Ashleigh on, I just want to give a quick shout out to my awesome Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date, and it's for any woman over 40 who is interested in real supportive guidance on her path to love. We have about 4,000 women in there now, and we are a heavily curated and guided group, very unusual in the single women space, where the common theme is let's complain and all support each other in our complaints. And we don't really grow if we do that. So we have a group that's really based on my core principles, and I have 7 awesome monitors who help me run this group. And you will really learn from the engagement with the posts and my videos that I do in the group, and so much goodness. So join us over there at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Ashleigh Renard. She is the creator of the viral How to Keep Monogamy Hot video series. She is known as the Carrie Bradshaw for married people. I love that. After sharing her own story of rehabbing a shabby marriage in her memoir, Swing, she now answers hundreds of requests from audiences each day on how they can improve their relationships. As a synchronized skating coach and choreographer, she spent over 2 decades fostering cooperation and teamwork for adolescent girls. Part coach, part storyteller, part cooperation whisperer, Ashleigh has inspired millions of couples to radically reimagine the connection and joy available to them in their marriage. Her memoir, Swing, has been optioned as a streaming series, and Keeping It Hot with Ashleigh Renard, an unscripted marriage fixer-upper show, is also in development. How cool is that? Welcome to the podcast, Ashleigh.
Sandy, thank you so much for having me.
You mentioned before we started that you have a great story about going on your last first date. So I would love to hear that before we start.
Yeah. So I've been with my husband, Manny, for over 20 years now. We took the same job out of college in 2002. I went to University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. He went to Temple University in Philadelphia. We both studied exercise physiology and then landed at this little gym in New Jersey, young, single, wide-eyed. And my first date with him, I didn't realize it was a first date till the end of the night because we were just coworkers, right? Hanging out, coworkers, but we had been getting like a little closer, a little closer. If we knew it was going to be a date, we would have chosen the movie we were going to see more carefully. We went to see My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And this is hilarious because he's Greek. And I grew up in a tiny little town in Manitoba, and I actually had never met a Greek person before, or I knew nothing about Greek culture, but I'd heard this movie was funny, right? Came out the summer of 2002. We went to the movie and I was just almost rolling out of my chair the whole time, laughing, then looking at him and saying, "Your family's not really like this, are they?" Well, he said, "No, of course not." And I said, "Of course not. This is a movie. This couldn't be real." And then at the end of that night, when he went to drop me off at home, I went in for a little hug, and then I lingered a bit because I wanted to kiss this hot man in his Toyota Tacoma pickup truck. It had big tires, Sandy. It was such a cute truck. And he kissed me back. And here we are, 20 years later, 3 kids, buying our 5th house together here next month. But it has been a wild ride. And I would like to join your group for single women because I have found that my marriage has gotten better only when I've started dating myself. Only when I've started really cherishing and adoring myself. And I mean, this is not work for the lighthearted, right? Trying to actually adore yourself. Self-love is the greatest and hardest thing I think any of us ever endeavor to do. And it wasn't until I figured out that as like the big gaping hole missing piece in my satisfaction as a woman in the world, as a wife, as a mother, that things then started to fall into place in our marriage.
Well, I love your story. I think, people don't realize that movies can often kind of make or break how we connect with somebody, even though movies are not a great first date, number one, because you don't get to know someone, but you already knew him from work. So that's the cool part. But I was just watching Freaks and Geeks, which I had never seen before. Have you ever seen that show?
I have not, no.
Fantastic series. I think it's on Hulu now. And Judd Apatow, who created the series, I mean, he's so good. And he really captures the moment in time, like when you're an adolescent, you're struggling with all the angst. And this kid goes to the movies with this girl they're in high school or middle school. They're 7th grade, 8th grade. I don't know. They're young. And he's had a crush on her for the longest time. And he takes her to see The Jerk with Steve Martin. And she is sitting there stoically thinking, this is the most immature, stupid film. And he's like cracking up and saying, this is gospel. They were like in love with Steve Martin, all their friend group. And it was just that moment, that light bulb went off. Like, you don't find the same thing funny that I do. And I don't think we can be dating anymore. It was just like, but I mean, it was just such a great moment. It just reminded me of that. But My Big Fat Greek Wedding is so iconic, and you don't have to be Greek to relate to the crazy families, because I think I grew up in a Jewish Orthodox family, and it has so many similarities. So it's just a funny story. But the kiss at the end, I love it. I love how you wanted to kiss him, but you didn't know, is this a date? Is this not a date? And here you are.
Here I am. And honestly, that has been one of the greatest puzzlements in our relationship, me trying to figure out how much he likes me. Because I was leaning in for this kiss and I'm like, I may totally get shot down. Like, I'm not sure of the cues with this man. He keeps it buttoned up pretty tight. And I am more outgoing with my communication and my emotion. And that, isn't necessarily an issue in a marriage, but it's something that we keep coming around to, year after year or decade after decade. And it's interesting how our differences in personality give us so much fodder for growth. And sometimes that growth comes after we've realized something just doesn't fit anymore. Like I've said, my book Swing is my story of rehabbing a shabby marriage. And we've just gone through a marriage renovation again over the past few months, that things like just didn't really fit anymore. It's so interesting, Sandy, because when I met my husband, he was 22 years old, I was 21. I thought, wow, he's an incredibly nice, caring guy. And, there were boxes that were checked and there was the physical chemistry, but the experience of actually being married to someone for decades and raising children. I mean, we were very good at raising babies together. So good. But now our oldest is 15 years old. We have 3 boys, 15, 13, and 9. So I'm getting to see my husband parent a high schooler for the first time. And it's not his best look, Sandy. Like, he's not that good at it. He really falls into kind of bro mentality with this 15-year-old in the house who's now taller than me. By the end of the year, I think he'll be taller than my husband. So that has been this delightful contrast that I've got to witness, really asking myself, wait a minute, how would I love my 15-year-old son to learn how to speak to a woman by seeing his father speak to me now that he's 15? And our conversations, the 3 of us, when we're all looking at each other in the eye, are a little different than when we're looking down at a 5-year-old trying to, get them to put their shoes on. Mm-hmm. So the things that we've had to kind of parse through and sort out, well, I would be lying if I didn't say it was annoying, because we've done so much work on our marriage and I've done so much work on myself. There are so many times that I wish it was just kind of done, which I think is probably a similar experience that women have when they're dating. Right? That I know what I'm looking for. I know what I want. I know what I value in myself. Can I just be done already? And let me tell you this, we're never done. Even if we're married, even if we don't have any more first dates, you know what? We ask ourselves, wait, how can we do something new in our marriage? We're always reaching for that next new thing because that's how growth works, right? But when we're in patterns of relationship with people, so often we're kind of spinning our wheels. I told my husband that much of being married to him, with the way his personality works, he's very practical, very pragmatic. Much of our relationship feels like I am moving backwards on a moving walkway at the airport. I'm not going backwards fast, Sandy, but it's like we're going in the wrong direction. But I know I need to hang out with you here for a bit before I tell you, hey, let's get off here and let's just try going on this one that goes this way. But change is one of the things I thrive on. And one of the things that's a little harder for him. It's a little less comfortable. So figuring out how to be myself in our marriage is the experience of my 40s, I think, to really come more into myself. And as I do, this panic rises up quite often and it says, ooh, but is he going to like that? Or are we still going to be a match? Or is it still going to work? Right. And there's that tension with like, not wanting to rock the boat. Right. Especially after you've got things to a pretty good place. But every time I'm brave enough to go, okay, wait a minute. I don't know what I want anymore. I know I said I wanted that before, or I know I said this was important, but I need a pause to reevaluate what we really want to do. And so when we're shifting things in our dynamic with our kids or the dynamic with each other, what I call it is recalibration. We just need to constantly recalibrate and go, wait a minute, are we going in the direction that we both want to go, which is like happy, joyous, free, and together?
You just said a whole lot of things that I've been like, my brain is going in a million directions. The first thing that I thought of is you talk about parenting a teenager, which is so different from parenting younger children, is it starts to bring up stuff. It starts to bring up, how do I want this child to be? Like you said, I want him to treat women in a certain way. I want him to have good examples. But then you're trying to correct your husband, which is very emasculating, right? To constantly tell him he's wrong. And so how do you convey that? And I know that in my marriage I wasn't able to, which is why I'm no longer married, but I do have a son who gets a lot of his inspiration as to how to be with women from me alone, and the conversations that we've had. So it's not necessary. I mean, he wishes he had a father who could have guided him better in terms of how to be with women. But my ex-husband is a sweet man who just didn't really have that skill. And he recognizes that dad wasn't so good at this. So I think that that's also something that comes up when you see the world differently, right?
Absolutely, because we've experienced it differently. And one thing that I want to just offer to your audience that I have found words to express in the past year is that we definitely come from different experiences, growing up in different countries, different religions. You know, I grew up in a very progressive, sex positive household. He grew up in a traditional Greek Orthodox household where he didn't even know the word for sex. It's just sex. But anyway, he just knew he was supposed to marry a virgin, but like the word sex was never said. It was so weird. But it's so interesting how so much is just conveyed without actually using the words. Okay, this is what I think. There are so many very nice men who cannot get to a really high level of emotional intelligence and relationship synergy and reciprocity. And like, it's just, they have a lot of things blocking them. And we all do. I think we all have a lot of things blocking us. One of the incredible gifts a man has being married to a woman is no longer is he closed off from the experience of women. He has a live woman, adult woman with, you know, who has possession of the English language, who can tell him what it's like. But a lot of men are not willing to hear what it's like, especially if they kind of get an icky feeling like, oh, no, but I laugh at jokes like that, or, oh, no, that's not a big deal. So one of the things I said to my husband, and it was when a rerun of Married with Children was on the television. Okay, if we're going to talk about the worst ever archetypes for what adult women are like, we have Peg, the wife of Al Bundy, who he despises. He despises. That is like a common joke in the show, how annoying his wife is, how he can't stand her, but he's got a hot daughter. So he makes comments to other men about, oh yeah, you could have a piece of my daughter. So it's like this ball and chain, cannot tolerate this adult woman in my house, but here is a younger version. And yes, anybody who wants to have sex with her, go with it. So there was this interesting, I don't know, it was like just a characteristic joke that Al Bundy made, and Manny laughed. And I think we were already in a situation of maybe me trying to push against his blind spots, his misogyny, his like internalized inequity that he doesn't even know that is there. And we all have it. And I said to him, that's not funny. And he said, but it is funny. It's just a joke. It's funny. I said, but it's not actually, but it's not, because it actually points back to this thing I keep asking you to see that you're like, I don't see that. I said, and here's what I need you to know. You're not allowed to tell me what is misogyny and what's not. You're not allowed to. You don't have an opinion on it, actually. If you're like, is that misogyny? And your gut is like, you ask me. Just like if I was a Black friend of yours sitting right here and said, hey man, turn this off. That's fucking racist. You would say, oh man, sorry. Okay. Maybe you'd even ask a question and go like, oh, wait a minute. You would hear him, right? And he was like, yeah, I would. And I was like, then why aren't you hearing me when I say it? I'm not just looking for something to complain about. I assure you, there are about 17 things I could complain about right now that I'm not saying anything about. So I want to be really clear that when the words come out of my mouth, that this is important, it's because it's important. And that's one of the things that has helped. And going back to that reminder quite often has really helped that. I don't want to emasculate my husband, But I also don't want him to think functioning at the emotional intelligence of a 14-year-old is him hitting it out of the park, because it's not. It's not for him, it's not for our children, and it's not for me. So I've made it really clear with him in my, I've said, pause, hey, can I talk to you? And we'll talk separately, or we'll talk in front of the kids. I am used to talking in front of children because I coached synchronized skating for so long. I'm used to having 12, 20, 40 children or adolescents in front of me while I'm making a decision with a co-coach or a visiting choreographer or an official from US Figure Skating, okay? I can talk about almost anything in front of children in a way that I think is pretty even and like not too rattly for them. And I also think the more we can talk about these things in front of our kids and say, wait a minute, here's a blind spot that I have. Here's a blind spot that your dad has. Here's how we could, what do you think about it? So that's the thing that I do. I pull up, I look for opportunities for my mind to be changed by my husband or by my kids. And so when one of them is really off base with the way that they're going at something, like I feel like that's not in alignment with your values. That's not in, and the thing is, my children's values are not a direct match with mine. And that's been an interesting experience, just witnessing them grow up. But I was paid to tell other people's kids what to do for a decade before I had my own. So allowing children just to show you who they are is what my practice was with kids. So as a mom, that was my like, oh, I know this feels really good. Like kids to me are like a present that just gets unwrapped a little more every year, and like until they're adults and you get to see like, oh my gosh, look at who you are. And then it continues, right? Because they keep delighting you. They keep delighting you. And there are times when it's not so delightful, their behavior. And what I love to do is point them back to, that's not what you have said is important to you. So pulling my husband back to that rather than like, I would prefer it like this. Although sometimes I do stomp my foot and I say, no, nobody around here seems to have a preference about this. I do. I have a really clear preference, and I'll tell you guys again why this really matters to me, or I think this could make things way easier for all of us without heightened emotion, just really sticking to the facts, and showing, I think that's the biggest thing, Sandy, showing my willingness to have my own thoughts challenged or my own viewpoints challenged. I think that's a way that it's like someone telling you you're wrong is not emasculating. It's not disrespectful. It's someone caring for you and going, ooh, I think you're off base. Can I show you where the base is? Here it is. Can I explain this to you? And then maybe, especially my 15-year-old Jack will say, oh, no, I don't want to do that anyway. I'm like, all right. And quite often I have to just say, all right, you've got the info. Let me know if you have any other questions about it, right? So there is the freedom and there's the surrender in it. And at the same time, I know my values and I know my standards for communication. And when my husband slips, I say, hey, here we are. Are you going to come up? The way I've been saying it in the past few weeks is going to sound emasculating, but we have done it in a playful way because we have this freshman in high school and we have a lot of things changing. We're moving to a new house. And this is kind of a height of relationship struggle with us, is when we want to move to a new house, it brings up a lot of things for us, just like sex may bring up for other people. And we're going to get to like how we keep it hot, even when we're constantly renovating this marriage. But what I've said to him, Sandy, is when he's like at this kind of low vibe or something, or I'll say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm trying to talk to you, but I feel like we're sitting at the kids' table. Like, can we go sit at the grown-up table together? Like, please, like, let's go. And sometimes when we do that, we'll go and we'll actually strip off our clothes and get in the sauna and have the conversation. Or we'll go for a walk or a hike and have the conversation. Like, we remove ourselves from the children to help both of us remember that we are the grown-ups here.
It all boils down to values. I love that you're constantly communicating, but you're bringing it back to values. It's not I'm right, you're wrong in the sense that I need to be right. I think what I'm taking away from this, and I think it's a really important point for our audience to remember, is that we have individual values and we also have relationship values. And when you can be really clear with the values of your relationship, and your own personal values, it's not really arguments. It's let's see if we're in alignment. Does that
Exactly.
fit our value system? And I did a workshop many years ago on family values with families. And I had the kids be part of it. Like, what are your family values? And so that they made like vision boards, and then they would put them up on their refrigerator and they would say, is that what you just did to your sister? Is that in alignment with our value of kindness? And so it's not, you're a terrible person. And, it's, we want to be aligned with our values. And I think for us to all start thinking about, what are our core values? Are we living in alignment with them? Are we choosing partners that are in alignment? Are we choosing work that's in alignment? It's like it informs every decision we make. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this.
Are we treating ourselves the way a lover or a kind parent or a mentor or a friend would treat ourselves, right? Because that's where this falls apart, Sandy. If you're like, here are values, here are values, here are values, and then your internal care is way off from that. We have to be walking the walk. We have to actually be aligned with our integrity when we are having these conversations. And the thing is, I slip out of integrity all the time. And I like to be caught on it or catch myself on it. Sometimes in the moment, if I'm really heated, I won't hear it, but then I'll come back and go, shit, sorry. And this is one of the things that I do in my marriage that I really practiced in parenting. It was hard for me to be as compassionate and kind and patient with my children as I wanted to. I yelled at my kids a lot when they were little. I kept it together with my skaters. I kept it together everywhere else. And then all of the overwhelm would just come out sideways at my kids. And I really wanted to stop yelling. And I did this challenge where I was going to try to stop yelling for a year, Sandy. And every time I would get to like 20 days and lose it. And it wasn't that like, it was like building up. It's just that I think I did not possess the coping mechanisms. I did not possess the new patterns and skills to really calm my nervous system before. So that rush of actually yelling was like this grand release that like I didn't know how to get in like any other way, right? And then I would feel bad after, but like my nervous system would actually like feel like lit up, right? So what I decided was, okay, no. I don't care if I yell at my kids a little bit every day. I'm going to apologize every time I act out of integrity for myself. Okay. So more than the volume of my voice, that was like, ooh, even if I make like a snide or a snarky, like, and it comes out, as a whisper, that's something to apologize for. Like I wanted to start holding myself accountable to the way I was behaving. So then it became easier in my marriage. And here, listen, I coached a sport where people would fall in front of me 30 times a day. Okay. And as a competitor, I would fall like 30 times a day if I was having like a training session where I was really working to get something new. So mistakes don't bother me. And I actually have a really high tolerance for mistakes in myself too. Once I started looking at those stumbles, those bumps in the road where I'm just really not being the version of myself that I want to be, as like, oh, I think I need to have a do-over here. That I'm sorry about that. Like I'll go right to my kids and go, whoa, that was completely out of line. Like, wow, talk about an overreaction. Sorry about that, babe. Okay. And then usually they're like, yeah, I know. And then like, just because I come and I'm like, what the hell? Because that's one of the things that I wanted as a kid when there was a big overreaction from my parents. And I went to kind of reconnect and I was like, well, that was kind of silly. Can't we all agree? And they were like, no, like doubling down. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do it that way. All right. So that's the thing, having the humility to go, Okay, I don't even know who was right in that situation, but like, can we try to do this better?
Having the humility to apologize is important. Setting yourself a goal of no yelling for a year is a little unrealistic.
That's the way I roll. I always go like the absolute extreme, and then I
Right.
land somewhere, and I go, okay, this is better.
Yeah, I can relate. I was a yeller. I was trying actually not to yell, and I was very sarcastic and snarky, and I had to catch myself. And actually, my kids also caught me. They would say, "Mom, your tone of voice. Mom, you are, it didn't matter what I would how I was saying it. It mattered that or what I was saying. It mattered the tone."
Yeah.
And anyway, it's a fascinating discussion. I think we should get into the topic of the day because we could talk about parenting and all this stuff. And I want to hear about swinging and why you thought that would help your relationship.
My book Swing is like the complete idiot's guide for what not to do in the swing lifestyle. It was like the first thing I utterly failed at. And I thought, oh, it would be really good for my ego to write a book about it because, I really took this perfectionism that probably I was born with. And then probably, those components of myself were nurtured in my family system. And then I went into figure skating, and then it was easy for me to get straight A's in school. And then I realized I'm at a point where I'm 10 years into my marriage. I've just tripled the size of my business. I started Philadelphia's first synchronized skating program and grew it to one of the biggest in the world. And I think my marriage is fine, Sandy. I think it's actually better than fine because we never fight. I think it's better than any other marriage out there because we don't have any rock in the boat. Like, other people are so like fiery and fighting. We've never had a fight at this point. Okay. Which we really thought was, we were patting ourselves on the back for just being so dense in a lot of areas, but it was part of our own learning. The reason we first Googled swing sex clubs was because we were so burnt out from life. We had 3 kids. This was before pandemic. I was homeschooling on purpose just because I thought it would be harder. Homesteading, home birthing, running my business. And my husband, super stressed. He was a stock trader. If you ever want an ulcer, stomach ulcer, try stock trading or working with skating parents. And we just thought, when have we ever had fun together? Like, what could we do to prioritize just enjoyment for us? Because everything was about being super practical financially, professionally, all these things. So we went to a club just to have fun because we thought our marriage was incredible. Very quickly, we realized, oh, wait a minute, I think maybe the stuff we've been sweeping under the rug didn't just stay like the tiny little morsels or crumbs. It fermented and it grew and it molded and it morphed. And now basically we have an elephant in every room of our house that we have completely ignored. Before we got to that part, we did experience the fun, sexy part of the swing lifestyle. So for your audience, I don't recommend it, but there are some people who do make non-monogamy work. I'm kind of jealous of them because it doesn't work for us. But when you go to a club, about 2/3 of the people who are there are not planning to interact with any other person other than their partner. They're just going there for the atmosphere. So the first third, maybe they'll go there for the incredible atmosphere. People are having sex all over the place, Andy. It truly is what you would see. It's actually, I've never seen a movie that's sexy enough that represents it in a really sexy way. So that's why I'm so excited about Swing the series, because I'm like, oh, no, we're going to show it, the really cool subculture. It's a very interesting whole world. The other third of people who are there are maybe going to be there for the atmosphere and then go to one of the private rooms at the club and have sex with their partner there. Right? Because that first third, they're just going for the atmosphere, then they're going to go home, jump each other's bones, maybe have great sex for a few days after, this afterglow. And then that last third of people are people who are actually planning to have some kind of interaction with other people at the club, whether it's touching on the dance floor, or it's kissing, and all of this, it's a very, very clear, explicit, enthusiastic consent before anybody would even come and dance with you. It's not a creepy environment, which I just want people to know that. And people of all shapes and sizes being naked, enjoying sex is actually an incredibly high vibe environment. People go, wait, are people good looking or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that doesn't even really matter, because like when you're just embodied and enjoying things, and when you're, friendly, and I mean, it's just a very welcoming environment. So that last third of people will be there to, maybe go to a back room with another couple, and maybe like there's kissing between the couples, and then, but you each have sex on separate sides of the bed, but there's, other people there to like raise the excitement level. Also, there are little curtains over the windows in most of these rooms. So you could decide, wait a minute, am I just going to go there with my partner and then leave the curtain open a bit and we can experience being watched? Like there's so many things, so many ways you can pull yourself out of your comfort zone and really see yourself and your partner in a whole new scenario, which when you've been together for a long time, being in a novel situation with your partner that's exciting doesn't happen very often. So what we realized was something we already knew, that having a really exciting sex life is definitely like a top 5 for both of us in life. Definitely, maybe even top 3. And we'd always known that. But the ways that we had to look at the other parts of our marriage that I had and actually the parts of myself that I had just pushed down, the needs that I had that I was really embarrassed about having, right? Like I was a really, really self-sufficient kid. I had 2 jobs by the time I was 11. Being 35 years old and realizing that I'm actually emotionally really needy, like probably no one else was surprised, Sandy, but I really was. I really was. So that's realizing our picture perfect Christmas card type marriage and family wasn't really as solid as what we thought it was. Like we thought we were rock solid, and really it was like a house of cards. So the humility it took to go, oh shit, I'm not even happy here. Wait a minute. I try to like say to myself, oh, but I've got this or that, or this next thing is on the horizon. Okay. Like I kept kind of dangling carrots in front of myself, usually professionally, to try to feel that satisfaction that I didn't really feel at an emotional level in our marriage. So I think if we hadn't dipped our toe in the swing lifestyle, if we hadn't, blown up our marriage the way that we had it, we probably would have just both snuck off at some point with infidelity or something. Like it would have fizzled out, or it would have like ignited in a different way that probably would have taken us apart. But the amount of cooperation and trust and communication we had to have to even step foot inside a club for the first time already set us on a trajectory of taking a closer look at our relationship before we even went. So in that, still wouldn't say I would recommend it, but it's not something I would change at all, because if you could have, like this scientist's discovery kit to just go, okay, show me everything about my marriage, show me it all. I don't know. I wonder if people would want to know where they wouldn't, Sandy. It's probably based on personality, right? But I'm the kind of person who wants to know.
Well, it's a fascinating story. And I think a lot of people will be intrigued to hear it. They may not have the courage to do it or even think it's the right thing for them to do. But I think what is really important to note is that we often think things are good because we're not fighting. And I remember when I first started dating after my divorce, and I would meet men who said, I had the perfect marriage, we never fought. And I'd go, did you ever have an honest conversation? Like you cannot have a healthy relationship if you always agree on everything, or you suppress the things that are important to you. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean you have to have all out brawls and fights all the time. You have to learn how to fight well, and you have to learn how to discuss stuff. But it's important to be able to voice your opinions and to hear each other. And so few people know how to do it, which is why I focus so much on communication skills and boundaries in the work that I do, because, I had a client this morning who expressed something that was going on in her life to the man she just started dating. And his response to it was completely off. He was compassionate, but he was addressing something that she wasn't saying. So I spoke to her about setting up the conversation differently next time. Like, talk to a person about what do you need from them? What kind of response? Do you want them just to listen and not give you advice? Do you want to just let them know because you're in a vulnerable place right now? I mean, if we can just communicate that, right?
Oh my gosh. And Sandy, this is one of the things that makes me a little jealous of people who are dating in their 40s, because I didn't know any of that stuff about myself when I was courting my husband or whatever, when we were dating. And even that's the kind of conversation that we're having every day in our marriage right now. I will go to him and I'll be about to start telling him the thing, and I'll go, oh, okay, I'm going to tell you this thing. I just want you to listen, or just match my excitement, or could you ask me 3 questions about this? He really loves a very tangible, he adores me, but he can't quite figure out how to let me know that all the time, right? So he knows that, words of affirmation are my love language, and that I'm a writer and a storyteller, but he needs the reminder sometimes, ask me a question about that, or this is how conversations go. We go deeper like this. And it sounds, for people listening, I can imagine women feeling exhausted, oh my God, I do not want to have to baby a 40-year-old man. And I don't want to either. But I adore my husband, and neither of us were taught very good communication skills. And I don't want to leave our kids to reinvent the wheel, I don't want every generation to go marriage, we'll give it a shot. I don't know, and it's so interesting because this oh, everybody wants to get married and it's the natural, but are we at over 50% of divorce marriages ending in divorces? We do marriage badly, I think. Right? And a marriage could be so much better than what it is. Even a lot of people who stay married are dissatisfied in their marriages. So I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to go, wait a minute, what did you just say? Okay, because this is what I got from that. Is that what you meant? Okay,
Right.
Well, then maybe we could choose different words. And letting it be like a laboratory. What I want from my family and my home is that we learn to love ourselves and love each other fucking top notch. We know how to love, and we know how to let someone know we love them. We know how to show compassion. Even my kids, they fight with each other. They're kids, right? Even letting them in on perspectives I see from their different personalities, that and the reason that they may be bumping up against each other, and without it being right or wrong. We are all different. I coach synchronized skating, 16 to 20 athletes having to be exactly the same at the exact same time, right? What I realized probably a decade into my coaching career was the way I could execute that the most consistently was for me to know, and for the skaters themselves to know, how fundamentally different each one of us was. So our differences is what makes us stronger. It's not cliche, it really is, right? And in a skating line, literally the skills I would need from the skater who was leading the line, and the skills I would need from the skater who were at the back of the line, and the skater in the middle, were all different. We're all different. So it's a kaleidoscope of just strengths that I see when every human walks through the door. So I think my family would benefit from that. So knowing when to interject and when not to, and knowing really that my husband and my kids don't want to be coached by me at all. They want to be loved by me, and they want to be loved by each other. Even though, they would say that they could, take it or leave it with their little brother. It's that we just have to just bring the level back up and go, no, we treat each other well here. And we're not going to hit it all the time. We're all going to fall short of that often. And that's okay. But this is what we're trying to aspire to here.
It's a good thing to aspire to. I just think that home is a learning lab, and kids fighting, it's important because they learn how to resolve conflict. They learn, because nobody's sitting there saying, stop fighting, you are, just shut down. the conversation, because that's how most of us were raised. Don't talk about it. Just get over yourself. And then we have feelings about our feelings, and we feel guilty for having feelings. I mean, it's just, we have to undo so much damage. And so if we can raise this generation to not be afraid to have feelings and to go there and to work stuff out, it gets better over time. I mean, my kids are all adults now, and it's been interesting watching my oldest daughter, who's married, and how she navigates the differences in her marriage. And it can come to a head at times when you feel like, oh my God, I'm married to the wrong person. And then you learn, oh, wait, I also play a part in this. And there's a reason why he's this way. And there's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing with it. You know, it's the most difficult thing that we do, but mostly because I think none of us were taught. And I think that if we can, right, we can learn these relationship skills, dating skills. It's a skill set. It's not inborn. I mean, love is a birthright, but everything else is taught.
Right. Getting along is a skill set. Thank you for saying it that way. And like, I think we are wired to get along. That is our default state. Cooperation is our birthright. Harmony is what we prefer. It's when we have internal harmony that is off, that then we are not our best selves. And a less than stellar version of me bumping into a less than stellar version of you, Sandy, our conversation would not flow as nicely, would it? Right. We would be bumping, we wouldn't be as willing to flow with this together. Like, there are just so many examples of this. And this is what I saw with my skaters. Again, over the years, skaters didn't choose to skate on the same team together. They chose me as their coach. And then each year after tryouts, I would set them like, okay, 14 of you here, 20 of you here. And I taught them how to care about each other, how to keep each other safe, how to help their teammates look and feel great in the majority of moments. And these kids didn't even choose to be teammates. So if a married couple says, hey, we're having some problems, and this is usually via DM, and a husband will say, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, what does your wife say when you ask her this? And he goes, just a minute. And then he gets back to me, she said this. And I was like, oh, because what I used to do with skaters, if ice time's expensive. So if they weren't getting along, say like two 16-year-old girls, I have to just drop right to their level energetically and go, hey, what's going on with you? Okay, what's going on with you? Oh, well, you're in luck. I see so much common ground. You guys both want the same thing. You're just saying it in a different way. Do you see? You're both trying to do the same thing. Can you go do that together now? And they'd be like, yeah, because there's no bad guy. There doesn't have to be a bad guy. That's the thing that I think we miss so often. Who's right, who's wrong? We're just different. Okay, we're just different. And we have to decide, if we're married, all right, where should we be so that it feels satisfying for both of us? And I think a lot of times we have give and take and compromise. And so we move the bar down like this. I say, no. If we were trying to be an elite unit, if we're trying to be an epic partnership, if we are trying to be like a duo that would like win the NBA finals, or we're starting the next Apple, okay, and we're like co-founders, are we going to like go, nah, we're not going to get what we want, let's drop the bar? No, the stakes are higher, right? The stakes are higher. And I just want to raise the stakes for happiness, because I think a lot of people have said, oh, I don't know how happy I'm going to be. Maybe when the kids are gone, I'll feel better or whatever. But like, let's raise the stakes for happiness, like every day, right? Mm. Because like, how we spend our days is how we spend our life. And when we ignore our happiness, it's really easy to really lose track of time and then look back and go, oh shit. And I think a lot of times we see this when we look back maybe at old photos. That's when I see it. And I go, oh, I was sad on that Christmas. And I remember I was sad on that birthday. And I remember I was sad there, right? But like, it's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Because I mean, this is the soup that my kids are growing up in, that my husband's, in, that our pets are like, no, we can crank up the joy level and say, no, we can tolerate a life that feels better than this.
Yeah. And we often source our happiness from other people instead of ourselves. So I have to tell you that when I was 40, I finally decided that I needed to start planning my own birthdays. You talked about sadness on your birthday. And I had a sleepover party. I had just moved to a new town and I had a 1-year-old who was still nursing, but the rest of the kids were old enough to go away with their father. And I kicked them all out of the house. I had probably 7 or 8 sleepover friends,
Amazing.
and it was so much fun. We made individual pizzas. We had an art project. We had crazy presents that people bought me, weird lingerie and all kinds of fun things. But the whole thing was just joy because I created it, and
Love it.
I gathered together people from my life, from all parts of my life, who didn't even know each other, and they all came together and we all shared common values. We shared the ability to laugh at crisis, the ability to, I mean, somebody was going through a divorce, somebody's husband was a drug addict, another person had breast cancer and was recovering, but we all got together to laugh and have fun and celebrate. And I think that so many, and I see my children have done this, especially my daughters, where birthdays were dreaded. Every birthday was a disappointment because people didn't do what they thought people should do. And it's again that mind reading, it doesn't work. So so I think, we need to source our own joy first, and that is contagious. But let's get back to the bedroom for a minute. And
that's a great place to talk about joy, because that's the thing, Sandy, that a lot of people in married relationships have really said, yeah, the amount of joy I'm allowed to feel right now is pretty low because I have to handle all these kids and this and that. And then when their husband will come pull on their shoulder like, hey, baby, can we have some sex? Women are like, oh my God, like I haven't done anything for myself today, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I think quite possibly the next frontier of equitable partnership is not going to be about who does the dishes. It's like, how many orgasms are we having? I think equitable partnership, the bedroom is the prime place to shift these dynamics. Think about it. Quite often, traditionally, like if we're just talking like just generalizations here, right? It would be like, men have more spontaneous desire, not always. And then women would have more like responsive desire, like not really in the mood until you like start doing it or whatever. But here's the thing. What if every time you go into the bedroom, whether your partner initiated or you did, you decide, I'm going to have the best sex of my life today. I'm going to have the best sex of my life today. Okay. And even if you don't have the best sex of your life, you might have something pretty close or something different or something, but like going in with intention, not just going through the motions. What I hear from men so often is that they would love for their partners to receive. They would love to actually perform oral sex specifically on their partner more often than they are welcome to do so. Because their partner, a lot of time wives will be like, yeah, we can have sex, just like make it quick. I don't need anything. You just. And the wives think, oh, I'm doing a favor to my husband because he just wants to ejaculate. And yes, he wants to use my body as part of this right now. Okay. But no, that's not actually what he wants at all. He wants time with his partner. He wants to worship her as the goddess she is. But a lot of women running around very fast every day, carpool, this, that, they don't feel like goddesses. They feel like robots. So then they're like, yeah, can I just go have robot sex? It's like, no. If we could actually be embodied, right? So for a lot of us, and I mean, I don't initiate sex that often, but I am very committed to, making a date with my husband and then having it be really great. Like I want to like be breathless and sweaty and give him like a high five across the bed. Like, whoa, we were good at that. Like, that's what I love in the bedroom, that intensity, even if it's a quickie, even if, we're in there for a few minutes, we lock the door and, the kids are on their screens or whatever. That's what I recommend for people to do, to figure out what kind of sex is worth having. Like Emily Nagoski says that in Come As You Are. If you were going to have sex for 20 minutes, what would happen in that 20 minutes? Make a list. So that's one of the things I do in my free challenges for couples is I'll say, hey, if you had 20 minutes to have sex, what would you want that to include? Okay. Now make another list. If you had 2 hours for sex, what would you include? Because that's one of the things that we always do. And this is a leftover from sex club, Sandy. We really miss getting dressed up and Manny taking the kids for a sleepover, dropping them off at his parents. I put on music. Maybe I'd pour a little glass of wine or something. And I'm like getting myself ready. I'm like, that grooming, that time to myself, that's something that makes me feel really in my body. Even if I'm highlighting my hair, I feel just really in my body when I'm like doing things physically to care for myself. And then he would come home and we would go to the club and, you know, come home late, have sex almost in the driveway. And then the next morning, now what we do is we'll have an early dinner reservation. We'll go out for a 5:30 dinner. We have our phones away when we're having dinner. Then when we get home, it's all about sex when we get home. Like the phones are going away. No TV is being turned on. We're going right into the bedroom. Maybe we're going to have a sauna. Maybe we're going to have a shower. But we do long sex during this. So my partner will climax first. So we'll start just fooling around, foreplay. And here's the thing that I would say I would say between 25 and 50% of our sex includes intercourse. We play with toys, we have manual stimulation, we do oral, we have all of these ways of enjoying each other that's like just more, I don't know, just it feels more intimate. It feels slower. It feels just more indulgent. And to let myself be indulgent and indulged, or, you know, both, it's just a whole different mindset to like turn yourself. It's almost like wedding night sex. Like if I hadn't have been so tired the night of our wedding, do you know what I mean? But it's that once a month we do that, Sandy. And then, so he'll climax and then it's my turn. I'll have 3 or 4 orgasms. And then we usually finish with intercourse and then he'll finish again. And he feels like the king of the world. And I feel incredible because I dressed up and I had a great dinner and I had great orgasms and we're just both so happy. You know, we're both so happy. Then the conversations we'll have the next morning, or the like willingness to see things in a new way. There's just so much goodwill when it's like, oh my God, like my cup is full and so is yours. And our kids' cups are full. We'll go pick up the kids at the grandparents. I don't know who's happier, the kids or the grandparents that they got the sleepover. Like, and for people who don't have family around, maybe this is where you ask a friend. You know what I mean? Like I'm in a privileged situation where we have control over our work schedules and we have people to watch our kids. But I think that there is a lot of creativity that's missing in the bedroom, because women have thought their creativity is better used in other places.
Well, I love the whole intention of setting the intention and getting creative and turning off distractions and knowing that pleasure is such an important thing. And I think especially for women, we don't allow ourselves pleasure on so many levels. And I remember having this conversation around food. We are always in restrictive mode. We can't eat this and we can't do that. And we have to look a certain way and act a certain way. And we're constantly managing everybody's lives and not taking care of our own. And what you're describing is filling yourself up because, you know, that impatience with your kids, that impatience and annoyance with other people, your spouse, your partner, those all come from being empty inside, being depleted, being unfulfilled on some level. You have no patience for anybody else. So I think this is such important advice. I think that whether you're in a committed relationship right now, whether you're dating and you want to just spice up the bedroom, or you're in a long-term marriage, this is something really important because sex can become robotic. It can become off the table altogether. And we have to be intentional about anything that is important in our lives. So I love this. I love the conversation, Ashleigh. And I would love for you to share one link where people can find you, and I'll share the rest of your links in the show notes.
I would love for you to come say hi on Instagram. Send me a DM. Tell me you heard me on Last First Date with Sandy. I would love to connect. So I'm Ashleigh Renard on Instagram. Ashleigh, ASHLEIGH. The Ashley with all the extra letters.
Well, you're a person with all the extras, so why not have extra letters, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ashleigh, for coming on the podcast today, for spicing up our podcast with some sexiness and And also just joy and pleasure and possibility, because we all need it. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
And thanks everybody for listening today. If you love our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.